Hello, I'm Amy Wagner from Fox 19 in Cincinnati. I'm here to walk you through our continuing coverage of our investigation into Cincinnati leaders living outside the city. As it happened, in 2014, our investigation was dubbed Residency Gate. We broke it on May 6th.
The Fox 19 10 o'clock news.
A Fox 19 investigation is causing a major shakeup in City Hall. Good evening. I'm Scott Schneider.
And I'm Amy Wagner in for Tricia tonight. City Council members are demanding answers to what we found regarding high-ranking city employees. I've been following this story for weeks now. Last year, City Council members unanimously passed an ordinance requiring that all city department directors live within city limits. But our investigation found a number of them actually reside outside of the city, and it appears council members had no idea until now. Nearly 300,000 people live in the city of Cincinnati. 6,000 city employees work together to protect, serve, and enhance their lives.
Those home values.
And about a dozen of those employees have the title of department director, making six figures, leading large departments, and calling the shots that directly impact residents.
I firmly believe that people who run the city should live in the city.
That's why Wendell Young and members of Cincinnati's City Council unanimously passed this ordinance last May, stating that, quote, senior executive officers who hold the titles of city manager, assistant city manager, or director shall be required to reside in the city of Cincinnati while holding such fiduciary positions. That ordinance goes on to explain that, quote, city residency is an essential component of such officers' ability to perform their employment responsibilities. Several weeks ago, Fox 19 Investigates requested the addresses those department directors provide for their residency. The city supplied us with this list, showing the streets those department directors live on. But through our investigation, we were able to determine exact addresses. One of them, Tony Parrott, who runs Metropolitan Sewer District and makes more than $180,000 a year, supplied an address on Westwood. A source within the city discovered the exact address Parrott supplied is a vacant lot and sent us this picture. When we went out to see for ourselves, this is what we found. Then we tracked down Parrott's actual address in Butler County, where Parrott's wife admitted. We're doing a story about the city directors in Cincinnati, right? He's the MSD director, but he lives here. Okay, we're doing a story about where they're living.
Okay.
Did you know it's part of the requirement to live in Cincinnati?
Yes.
And then there's this man.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Ken Glenn. I'm the Director of Department of Citizen Complaint and Internal Audit.
Glenn makes $119,000 a year. The address the city provided for Glenn in the 4500 block of Wetzel. But at the exact Wetzel address we uncovered for him, we were told he has never lived there. So no one named Kenneth Glenn has lived here in 30 years? Okay.
Not at all. It's just the D's.
We found out George Dees, who owns that home, is actually Glenn's brother-in-law. On property records for Glenn's actual home in Westchester, his wife is listed as Shirley A. Dees Glenn. There's also the woman who runs the city's Human Resources Department, who gives this address on Probresco Street. Georgetta Kelly, according to the city's website, specializes in rules compliance. She says she lives in the bottom floor of this apartment building with broken-out windows near UC's campus. Not exactly a place you might expect someone who makes $135,000 a year to call home. A mailbox here does have her name on it, and in this email she sent to Fox 19, she tells us she has lived here for a little over a year and has a lease agreement along with utility bills. She also tells us this is her primary address for IRS purposes and votes in Hamilton County. But neighbors tell us they have never seen a woman coming or going from Kelly's apartment. You've never seen a woman go in and out? Okay, how long have you lived here?
Like 6 months.
Property records show Kelly owns multiple homes in Montgomery County, including this gated home in Dayton where her husband lives. But Kelly maintains she lives here. We asked her for an interview at her apartment. She told us she would consult with her attorney, then denied our request. And then there's Willie Carden, who makes $137,000 running the city's parks. Carden lives in this home the records show he built in 2009 for $402,000. Carden pays his property taxes to Colerain Township. Several days after Fox 19 visited these homes, Meg Olberding, the city's director of communications, sent us an email saying she was finalizing an email letter to us, quote, that documents residency requirements were overturned on appeal in the courts. That same day, we learned Human Resources Director Georgetta Kelly sent this email directly to all department heads regarding our story, requesting they forward addresses directly to her. Parrott's response to Kelly, the address we found in Butler County. He also said, quote, call me tomorrow if you need to discuss. We also have Glenn's response to that email, in which he states, quote, I tried to edit my address in the city's HR system, but was not successful. Please have your staff make the necessary change. That change to Glenn's real address in Westchester. When we did receive that email Olberding promised, she changed her story, admitting there is a residency requirement for directors and attached a new list of addresses, telling us someone had accidentally sent us outdated addresses. This time, both Parrott's and Glenn's addresses changed to reflect where they actually live, outside the city limits.
If your word is no good, you are no good. So if they're actually lying, their word is no good.
We asked every current member of council who voted on that 2013 ordinance requiring directors' residency for an interview. Both Charlie Winburn and Wendell Young sat down with us.
That for whatever the reasons are, either the administration was unaware or the administration was misled as to where they live. In both cases, I find it troublesome.
And as a response to our investigation, Young has demanded interim city manager Scott Stiles launch an internal investigation into those directors. In response, Stiles sent this memo to council members last week, stating, quote, it is my understanding that verbal waivers / understandings and/or agreements were made in the past with a few department directors related to expectations around the residency requirements. Meg Olberding also claims Parrott and Glenn were promoted to director positions from within, and because of that, weren't required to move. Fox 19 legal analyst Mike Allen says neither argument holds water.
The ordinance rules, and the ordinance, to me, looking at it on its face, is pretty clear. If you're in a position like these people are in, you got to reside within the city of Cincinnati, and somebody dropped the ball at City Hall.
As the city manager's office has launched a complete legal analysis of the ordinance, on Friday, a city spokesperson contacted us, telling us they discovered a city administrative code which doesn't technically classify Carden or Glenn as a director. Now keep in mind, when we had asked specifically for directors' addresses from the city, both of their names were on that list, and both report to the city directors meeting every Tuesday morning. Charlie Winburn believes the 300,000 people who live in Cincinnati deserve better.
I believe that all these directors should be given 90 to 120 days to move back in the city of Cincinnati, or we'll have to accept their resignations.
We have reached out to all of those directors in our story. All declined our interview requests. Meanwhile, the city's director of communications, who was in our story, Meg Olberding, is no longer with the city. Her last day was Friday. We'll have reaction from City Hall to this investigation tomorrow.
Now we got residency gate.
That's what Cincinnati council members today dubbed what Fox 19 uncovered in our exclusive investigation. Last May, council unanimously passed this ordinance requiring all city department directors to live within city limits. Those dozen or so directors all make six figures, lead large departments, and have a huge impact on the people who live and work in the city. But we learned several of those directors don't live in the city, an issue council members took issue with today.
I've always been a fervent believer that if people make the rules for this city, they ought to live here. If Cincinnati is good enough for you to generate a paycheck from, I think we're good enough for you to live here.
But council members say that's not the most disturbing thing our investigation uncovered. We learned the man who runs Metropolitan Sewer District, Tony Parrott, supplied an address on Westwood. Turns out that address is a vacant lot. Meanwhile, Parrott lives in a home in Butler County. Kenneth Glenn, who heads the city's Department of Citizen Complaints and Internal Audit, also lives in Butler County, even though he originally supplied an address on Wetzel. But at that address, we found.
So no one named Kenneth Glenn has lived here in 30 years? Okay.
Not at all. It's just the D's.
Turns out George Dees, who owns that home, is Kenneth Glenn's brother-in-law. On Glenn's property records in Butler County, his wife is listed as Shirley A. Dees Glenn.
I'm not willing to overlook the fact that we've been lied to, and we've allegedly been lied to. But if we have been lied to, I'd like to see in your report what we're going to do about that.
Also in question for council members, the Human Resources Director, Georgetta Kelly. She supplies an address in this apartment building near UC's campus. In an email, she tells us she pays rent here, has utility bills, and votes in Hamilton County. Her name is on a mailbox here, even though neighbors say they've never seen her. Meanwhile, her husband lives in a gated home in Dayton, Ohio.
This is really a complex issue. There's been recent state laws that have been changed. There's city ordinances. We've got administrative codes that we're thinking about.
This is the man charged with getting to the bottom of what we found, Interim City Manager Scott Stiles. Council members asking him to look into the residency issue, the possibility that false addresses may have been supplied, and the implications that could have on voter fraud.
It's not just a small issue if we have directors who are indicating their residency in different locations and that doesn't match up with the Board of Elections.
We did reach out to all of the directors in tonight's story for comment on what was said at today's council meeting. We have not, though, yet heard back from any of them.
So, Amy, the big question is here, what's next?
Yeah, well, Scott Stiles says he's looking very closely at this ordinance right now. In fact, some of these directors claiming there was some sort of a verbal understanding between them and the former city manager about this. So he said he's going to sit down and talk to each of them individually, and he hopes to present those findings to council very soon. Of course, we'll stay on top of it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
5 weeks after Fox 19 made the city aware of its own rules, the city took action. Turning now to the latest on a Fox 19 investigation into where Cincinnati department heads live. Tonight, that investigation is yielding results that impact taxpayers. 5 weeks after our story first exposed Cincinnati department directors not in compliance with an ordinance requiring them to live within city limits, tonight we have major developments from the city.
My belief is if you help to run this city, you ought to live here.
This from City Councilman Wendell Young, who asked for an internal investigation last month based on what our Fox 19 investigation found regarding top-ranking city department directors. We uncovered that while an ordinance required city department directors to live within city limits, some of them do not. Council members even dubbing what we found
Residency gate.
Our investigation also uncovered some directors providing addresses to the city on a financial disclosure form, which aren't where they actually live. According to this memo released by Acting City Manager Scott Stiles today, quote, "Two directors who I find actions rising to the level of dishonesty in relation to demonstration of city residency are the Director of Sewers and the Director of the Citizen Complaint Authority." MSD Director Tony Parrott, who lives in this Butler County home, has been given 180 days to move into the city. Parrott has also been docked 40 hours of vacation time, which is equivalent to nearly $3,500 in salary.
The city manager is within his purview, according to city charter, to handle all the administrative matters of the city.
Kenneth Glenn, the director of the Citizen Complaint Authority, was already planning to retire on July 1st.
Mr. Glenn is retiring, so I really don't know there's much you can do to him anyway.
While the investigation into residency may be over, for Councilman Young, the issue of residency is far from closed.
It really pains me, and it's just unfathomable to me that you be a part of the team that runs the city and not want to live here. The city's good enough for you to work in, earn a paycheck in, but not good enough for you to live in.
The regulations governing residency also changed today. Now only 8 of more than a dozen directors are required to live within the city. Now, if council wants all the directors to live within the city as they had originally intended, it will require a vote of 3/4 of the members of city council, something Young does say he will discuss with other members of council.
When December came, we found out why Parrott's house wasn't on the market. He had no intention of moving.
A follow-up tonight to a Fox 19 investigation into a Cincinnati department director who lied about living within the city when he actually did not. After we revealed that Metropolitan Sewer District head Tony Parrott was actually living in Butler County, he had 180 days to move here to Cincinnati to comply with the city's residency requirement. But late last week, Parrott told City Manager Harry Black he has no plans to move.
So Black put out a memo yesterday recommending the residency requirements be expanded to include all of MSD's service area, which would include Parrott's Butler County address. This afternoon, our Amy Wagner caught up with City Council member Wendell Young, who is very much against Black's proposal.
And as much as I like and respect Mr. Parrott, I do not believe for a moment that we can't replace him. I prefer not to. I really hope that he will change his mind and move. But if he doesn't, then I think the city has no choice but to follow through.
Vice Mayor David Mann is also against Black's proposal, but for an entirely different reason. He's asked the city solicitor to prepare an ordinance to remove residency requirements altogether for everyone except the mayor and the city manager.
We have to get past the visceral idea that, well, geez, if you work for the city, you should live in the city. There are 5,000 people who work for the city who are not required to live in the city. We're talking about 7 or 8 or 9 that are left.
Councilmember Chris Seelbach took to Twitter to gauge the community's position on the issue, saying, should directors of city departments be required to live in the city? Looking for real feedback. It would take 7 of the 9 members of council to approve Black's proposal, or Parrott could be out of a job.
And when 2014 had come to a close, Cincinnati City Council had still not decided how to handle the residency issue. Fox 19 will continue to hold everyone involved accountable. We believe our coverage in 2014 is deserving of an Ohio Associated Press Award. Thank you for your consideration.